Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm your host Scott Ranf, and with me today is Robert E. Parcell. He's running for Missoula County Sheriff, and he's here to tell me why and what it's all about and why he's the best choice for everybody. And you have a couple opening statements you want to say, so go ahead.
Well, sure, you bet. Thank you. And I go by Bob, too, so I appreciate that. First of all, I'll just give a little background. I was raised near Tucson, Arizona from the age of 1. 43 years ago, I came to Missoula to train as a smoke jumper. It was 1971. I ended up spending 4 years at that time, and then began a career in the Marine Corps as a Marine Corps officer, came back and smoke jumped again. So I've been affiliated with Missoula and Missoula County for the last 43 years. I'm married to Danny. I have 10 children. One son is raising his family in Texas. I have a daughter who's raising her family in the Arizona area, and I have 7 children in college or on their own, and one is still at home. I graduated from high school in Tucson, Arizona. I have a bachelor's degree bachelor's of science degree in forestry from Northern Arizona University, and I have a master's degree in human resources management from Pepperdine University. And at this time, human resources is probably very pertinent in light of what's been happening in the area. And I think I'll just leave it at that and see what kind of questions you have.
All right, you kind of answered the first question, but just to help narrow it down, what do you feel are your qualifications, trainings, and life experience that make you the candidate for the job?
Very good. Okay. Well, again, I think my education and my life experiences in leadership and management, which I've had quite a few, basically make me the candidate for this position. I also have no dog in the fight of what's currently been going on, so I'm kind of the one that can bring everything back to a cohesive unit again. But in any case, let's go into my areas. Again, you understand about my education. My duties in the Sheriff's Office since 1982. I've been the resident deputy in the Sealy Swan area for quite a while now. A uniform patrol officer for many, many years. A detective, I do that at all times. Coroner, search and rescue coordinator, recovery and rescue scuba diver. I've been the law enforcement dog handler. I've been the smoke jumper liaison officer. I've actually jumped with the smoke jumpers as the sheriff's representative to the smoke jumper organization, and personal watercraft and boat patrolman, and civil officer and snowmobile patrolman, as well as everything else there is basically that's been done on in the sheriff's office. My honors include Jimmy Carroll Award in 1984 for having the highest academic record during the basic school, basic class of number 55. Achieved a perfect score, final exam, basic class 55. It's the first time that was ever accomplished. I have a Purple Heart Medal for being wounded in the line of duty. Armed Action Medal for being involved in a gun battle in the line of duty. Local Officer of the Year in 1992, International Association of Chiefs of Police, and DuPont Kevlar Survivors Club Award in 1992. 1993, Montana State Officer of the Year. 1994, I went to Washington, D.C., received a certificate of commendation from President Clinton, which was presented at the White House in the Rose Garden. 1998, I was the Domestic Violence Peace Officer of the Year. And in 2001, I was the Montana Law Officer of the Year with the American Legion. And I have 2 full pages of training, and you name it, just about everything under the sun. I won't go into it at this time. It's just too voluminous. The last training I took was just a couple of days ago, discrimination in the workplace. It's been presented lately for very good reasons, and I took that I don't have to, but I decided I would go to it and get kind of updated on all of that information. My non-law enforcement work experience, I was a fire control technician in the Salmon River District at Klamath National Forest for 2 years, and I was in the United States Forest Service smoke jumper in Region 1, made 120 plus jumps all over the West and Alaska fighting fire. My military experience is very voluminous as well. I started in the 90th OCS, the 90th OCS class, the United States Marine Corps, and I graduated as the honor man for 2nd Platoon Delta Company, and I augmented out of the basic school into the regular Marine Corps. I spent 5 years as a Ranf platoon commander, weapons platoon commander, assistant operations officer, substance abuse abatement officer for 15,000 men in Okinawa. I was a forward observer, gun platoon battery commander, executive officer, commanding officer, Battery 1st Battalion, 14th Marines, Artillery liaison officer, S1 adjutant with 114. Was called up for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Participated in exercise Battle Griffin in Norway at that time. And I was assistant operations officer for 23rd Marine Regiment in California. I was the IMA, which is Individual Mobilization Augmentee Detachment Commander, head of the exercise coordinator, Tactical Training Exercise Control Group out of 29 Palms, California. I was the OIC for the Marine Forces Pacific. It'd be the crisis action team when the towers went down. I was called up for 2 years in Hawaii to work for the general, the Marine Forces Pacific general, who was providing men and material to CENTCOM at that time. I was also activated later after that activation, so my third time, and besides going to Korea and such for ultra-focused lens, I activated in support of Iraqi freedom from August 2004 to June of 2005. At that time, I was Iraqi Police Service and Iraqi Security Forces, OIC. I got the police spun up again. I got them set up. I was in charge of the recruiting, education and training, equipment, and then mentoring for all the Iraqi police in about 1/3 of Iraq at that time. And that was my job in the Marine Corps AOR area of responsibility. My occupational specialties are Marine Corps Infantry Officer, Marine Corps Artillery Officer, Embarkation Officer. I've also been to the Command and Staff College 2 years and the Reserve Component National Security course as well. Had, again, my last tour of duty before I retired with 30.5 years. I served in combat in Iraq and was in the battlefield Fallujah, setting up the police stations and trying to get the Iraqi police commandos set up in there again to basically bring the law back into a lawless town.
All right, so the second question is a two-part question, and is, what are the primary functions of the job of sheriff as you see it? Is it a big change from being an active officer to being an administrator and leader?
Okay. I didn't quite finish my last one because it's too voluminous, as I said. I wrote too much on it as is. I think as the sheriff, I'll bring all my education, training, and experiences to bear in order to establish leadership management techniques required to properly lead the department in meeting the challenges that lie ahead. Okay, so the second question dealt with the primary function of the job of sheriff. Well, they're outlined in the Montana Codes Annotated. I sent that as well. There's two different parts since there's the part of as a sheriff, and then the sheriff is also the coroner, the head coroner for the county, and so I also have that as well. But I think if you want to go through those, you can go through the MCA and see the actual what's detailed in there. So we won't go into that. I said, first of all, the sheriff is head of the office, and as such, he establishes the standards, policy, and goals, and the priorities for the organization. And the atmosphere and the tenor in the unit is set by the sheriff. He is the driving force that establishes and maintains leadership management, and the one who must originate and develop the staff relationship necessary for the proper functioning of the organization. Without the proper staff relationships and techniques, issues soon become major issues that do not get addressed by an isolated sheriff. Even though individual issues take the spotlight, they are not the real problem. The real problem is the system which is established to identify and address the issues that arise. Another problem is the idea of indispensable personnel who perform vital functions with no one cross-trained to assume their duties when they're unable to perform them. The sheriff must immediately address these issues, as well as many others, when he assumes the office, or he will set himself up to continue the status quo. And this is definitely an undesirable situation. In my case, there is no big change between leading and administering the sheriff's office and what I have done in all my careers. I am very well versed in establishing and maintaining viable, cohesive, and responsive staffs that share information and form unified, timely responses to urgent issues and problems. All of my education, training, and experience makes me ideally qualified to lead and administer as sheriff.
All right. So the next question is in your opinion, what needs to be changed or developed from the current situation in the Sheriff's Department?
Sure. Well, as I've stated many times, it's the recent turmoil and the upheaval in the Sheriff's Office it's a very unfortunate state of affairs that's going to be ultimately have to be dealt with by the next sheriff. Any of the fallout, no matter what happens between now and then, is still going to be a lot of fallout from that. It'll have to be healed in order to reconstitute a viable, effective, cohesive, and responsive law enforcement organization. But right now, opposing factions divided it into two camps with little common ground. And due to my unique position, I have no dog in this fight, and I'm totally aloof to the well-known issues that are the basis for the conflict. And I have no problem with either of the candidates for sheriff, and very much like them as individuals and respect them as fellow law enforcement officers. But as a non-aligned candidate for sheriff, I provide the most viable solution to this very troublesome situation. As sheriff of Missoula County, I bring all of my education, training, experience, and expertise and leadership abilities to bear in order to reestablish a unified, cohesive force which will dedicate itself to its mission of fighting crime and not each other. The atmosphere and tenor in the department is established from the top down. Therefore, it has to be developed where us versus them means law enforcement and the public in partnership versus the criminals, not officers versus the administration. There is a wealth of knowledge and brain power within the department which will be tapped to improve the functioning and capabilities of the force. Many minds are always better than one. The sheriff's office must be modernized, but not just in gear and equipment. It must have an updated way of thinking and adapt new approaches to law enforcement. We must strive for an atmosphere where dynamic ideas can be discussed, vetted, and implemented with a minimum of roadblocks and hindrances. Proper staff functioning must be established and maintained, and courses of action developed to handle all new issues that arise. This all starts with a sheriff who knows how to establish such a staff and how to leave the status quo in the dust. Doing things just because they've always been done that way can never be allowed to become the operating system in the sheriff's office again. Discipline must be maintained in any organization, but especially true in law enforcement. Personnel who disregard policy, procedures, and or laws must be held accountable for their actions. That being said, it is also true that good work and success in crime fighting must be recognized and rewarded. A healthy organization is one in which neither of these ideas triumphs over the other. When it comes to leading men and women in endeavors that may put them in harm's way, it helps if you've been there before yourself. I have seen the elephant, and I know how to lead. And after 32 years with the Missoula County Sheriff's Office, I have a vested interest in success and welfare of the organization. I desire to see the Sheriff's Office continue to be the premier law enforcement agency which provides outstanding service to the citizens of the county. I want to fully bring the Sheriff's Office into the 21st century by revamping the philosophy, strategy, and tactics of leadership and management. I also would initiate sorely needed change by improving morale, leading from the front, and inspiring, motivating, and challenging personnel to succeed. The ultimate beneficiaries of this vision would be the citizens of the county who require and deserve the very best law enforcement possible. I'm the oldest candidate, but I have the youngest vision for the county, the Sheriff's Office.
All right. So the next question is, how would you characterize your relationship with the City of Missoula Police Department?
Right. And I kind of think that it's not just the police department. I think it's all other agencies dealing with law enforcement. I kind of put it in that. So when comparing the county sheriff's office to state, federal, and other local law enforcement agencies, I'm reminded of the comparison between apples, oranges, and bananas. They are all fruits, but they are beneficial for different reasons. Apples keep the doctors away. As the old saying goes, oranges provide vitamin C. The bananas are good for potassium. All these are good, desirable attributes, just as the county, state, federal, and local law enforcement agencies all have differences in jurisdiction, types of crimes they address, and abilities and resources. We would be foolish to try to pit the fruits against each other under the guise of providing our bodies a benefit. In the same way, we should not have to pit county, state, federal, and other local law enforcement agencies against each other in order to derive a benefit for our liberty and our society in general. In this age of terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, internal or international drug cartels and organized crime, serial killers, and almost instantaneous transportation and boundaries, transportation and communication, we need to develop a coordination and partnership that respects each other's boundaries, but still allows for the successful completion of their various missions. In the case of the county sheriff, this entails preserving the peace, arresting all persons who have committed a public offense, preventing affrays, breaches of the peace, riots, and insurrections. The various law enforcement agencies need to complement each other, not compete with or hinder each other in order to protect the public. Successfully impact the criminal element which routinely crosses county, state, federal boundaries, and preserve the Constitution and our way of life. We currently have great rapport with federal, state, and other local agencies, and we need to continue to build upon these relationships. We are all brothers in arms.
All right, so this last question on this sheet that you got was,
Yes.
What accomplishments have given you the most satisfaction and why? Well, in the way I kind of see it would be, what story in your past would kind of
Sure.
encompass your achievement?
Sure. When I think of my accomplishments, I always go to some of my first things that I did. I remember I was on duty for just a month, not even a month, and basically let loose on the public in the field, and I actually had to arrest 2 armed robbers leaving the scene of a crime after committing a robbery, and I was by myself with no backup, and I made that arrest out in East Missoula, found the people, stopped them, and etc. That's a biggie, because that was my first thing that I did that was actually dangerous and on the pointing to the spear. That was after only a month on duty. I also remember apprehending a felon who was disposing of the body of a female for his girlfriend, and I caught him. And anyway, the female had killed the girl. Is a long story. So that was another one that stands out. One of the homicide cases. Another one is another female who had killed her husband, blamed it on an intruder who did the shooting. Here she did. That always stands out. Those cases we investigated, I was in on the investigation, and we actually took the culprits to task. And there's always the case of the shooting in which I was wounded in the line of duty up in Lake County. I was assisting Lake County, got into an affray up there, and was shot by an individual with a .41 Magnum. That's always a big one that stands out in my mind. But the big thing is, other than these interesting criminal cases, I really look back upon my accomplishments. I've established great rapport with the youngsters in the local schools. It's always been gratifying to see the young people who return to the area and contact me, and they say, hey, I had a positive effect on them. That really stands out. And let's see, I've also established great rapport with the local businesses, civilian population, merchants, and so on. And my familiarity with those citizens has proven time and time again to be invaluable, has many times been the single most important factor when it comes to solving crimes. So that's what I really look back on with distinction as my accomplishments.
So, in your own, I'm making up this question
Sure.
on the spot. How did you want to become sheriff? Were you, was a coworker saying, hey, you know what, you should be sheriff, or your wife or family member says, who'd make a good sheriff? You would make a good sheriff. Or did you wake up in a cold sweat and say, oh, I have to be sheriff?
I understand. To become sheriff or to go into law enforcement?
To want to run this.
Well, I ran last time and put in a good shot at it 4 years ago, and since then, really things haven't improved, haven't been taken care of like I thought they might be. So that was kind of my thinking. And then this latest case where the situation has still. There's a schism that's developed in the department. That schism has to be fixed by the next sheriff. When I started thinking about that, there's nobody really there at this time, because they've all basically, it's a side-taking thing, that they've taken sides on the issue, and you're on one side or the other. I'm not. I'm totally out of that situation. I understand the problems. I understand the issues, and what came about. I have no interest in that, as far as I'm not on one side or the other. So I think I'm the one that can bring it together and be the one that draws things back together and get it working again properly like it's supposed to, and not be like one side wins or the other side wins. When I win, there's no side. The only people that will win will be the public, and that's why I decided to make a run for sheriff this time, to see if I can help put it back together.
Well, I hope Josh has been flashing up your website as much as he can, and it's bobparcellforsheriff.org.
It's Robert. I'm sorry. It's parcellforsheriff.org.
Yes.
And yes, please go to it. I think
that's where people can find more information about you.
Absolutely, all kinds of information, lots of photographs. You name it, they can flip through all the pages. I've got a lot of my writing in there as well. It states a lot of what I've already said.
All right, that sounds great. I think that about does it. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Give a shout out to anyone or anything?
Pretty much, I think I said what I needed to say, and other than however this goes, I really just wish the best for the citizens of the county, and thank you much for the time.
Well, thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining us on Meet the Candidates. And Robert E. Parcell, otherwise known as Bob Parcell, is running for Sheriff of Missoula County. So be sure to check him out on parcellforsheriff.org for more information. And for Meet the Candidates, I'm Scott Ranf.